combined effects of financial technologies and sustainability efforts are increasingly recognized in the financial sector. Fintech companies all around Eurasia are rising to the challenge to drive climate actions and decarbonization. Access to a large amount of data at high speed and low cost increases opportunities for investments in sustainable assets. Mobile apps help consumers and investors to track their carbon footprints or make informed financial decisions, while digitalized financial services can reduce CO2 emissions by up to 80%. Green fintech startups, supported by governments, regulators, and investors, have the potential to become a main pillar of a sustainable and stable financial system. Let's start this session with a quiz question. How much do you think the amount of funding for climate fintechs grew globally between 2021 and 2022? A. 72.8%. B. 141.7%. C. 50%. D. 31.7%. The right answer is option B. Climate fintechs are becoming increasingly popular among venture capital firms. In 2022, the sector attracted $2.9 billion in investments, up $1.7 billion from the previous year. Now it's time to discuss these topics and get answers to questions such as what innovative solutions can ensure a more efficient and accessible financial system, and how do central banks support these solutions? Recipe of sustainable finance.
Dear audience, welcome again at the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2023. After the remarkable opening ceremony, let us start with the first panel today, with finance in its center, where our guest speakers will discuss what kind of innovative solutions could ensure the prospect of a more efficient, accessible, and less vulnerable financial system. And now we are going to watch a short video on the topic, if everything is going all right. Okay, it seems that there has been a change of plans. So, dear audience, please, it is my pleasure to greet Ms. Anikó Szombati, Executive Director and Chief Digital Officer at the MNB, the Central Bank of Hungary. Starting the panel, we will hear a very inspiring fireside chat discussion between Ms. Szombati and two guest speakers. Ms. Szombati is responsible for promoting digital transformation in the financial sector as well as within the central bank, including the implementation of cutting-edge technologies and research on CBDC. Please welcome Ms. Szombati. Welcome, thank you for joining us, and we really cannot wait to hear your discussion.
Thank you very much, and I would also welcome everyone and call to the stage my two excellent speaking partners who will join me for this fireside chat on the recipe for sustainable finance and fintech. So, Mr. Namir Khan, who is the chairman of the MENA Fintech Association and also a founder and CEO of FILS, the region's leading sustainability-focused fintech. And he has been recognized as MENA's future fintech leader by the UEA Central Bank. Please. And I'm also calling Mr. Shadab TAIYABI, the president of the Singapore Fintech Association. Shadab has over 17 years experience working in the financial services industry and 14 years at fintech companies. He is also the member of the advisory board of the Point Carbon Zero program, jointly launched by Google and MES, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, to drive innovation, incubation, and scaling of climate fintech solutions in the region. Shadab, please. So, welcome both of you on stage. And I would like to start our conversation with the fact that according to the Financial Times, citing the report by the United Nations Environment Programme, the world is on track for a temperature rise of 2.9 Celsius above pre-industrial levels, even assuming countries stick to the Paris Agreement climate pledges. Coming ahead of the COP28 climate summit in Dubai just in 5 days, the latest UN report stated that the level of greenhouse gas emissions stood at a new peak of 57 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. To put this into context, the emission cuts of 14 billion tons, or 28%, are needed by 2030 to keep within the 2 Celsius of warming, and a more ambitious reduction of more than 40%, or 22 billion tons, is needed to reach the 1.5 Celsius threshold, which the scientists believe irreversible changes, above which these irreversible changes to the planet will occur. So the stakes are really high, and we are really at the latest point to act and to intervene. So first, I'm turning to Namir, as all global attention will be on the UEA in the forthcoming weeks. And so what do you think the financial sector in general and fintechs in particular can do promptly to save our planet for us and for the future generations?
Thank you so very much for a great introduction, and good morning to everyone. Thank you all for being here. A very important question in the sense, what's the important role of financial services? I will just put up one single point over here. As you mentioned, 57 billion tons of carbon emissions is being emitted on an annual basis. Carbon emissions is a product of consumption. We consume, so emit. When we consume, we emit. Consumption is a product of spending. You spend to consume, and spending is a product of payments. That is where how important of a role financial services plays, because everything we see around us is a part of financial services. Whatever we have bought, whatever we have sold, financial services is a part of it. So, first of all, the thread that financial services is going to be playing is going to be extremely critical and essential. One. Point number two, from point A to point Z, all the fintechs are going to be a part of the climate fintech transition. Every fintech is going to be a climate fintech. The reason why we say this again, because today fintechs are embedded into every single industry. And every single industry, whatever we see around us, when we are going to be achieving net zero will be achieved by two things. First thing is going to be carbon removal. So first thing I would say carbon reduction, where we become more efficient. The second thing is going to be carbon removal. Again, fintech plays a critical role in order to ensure that end-to-end transition that we are seeing from efficiency to carbon removal is happening through financial services. Now, on top of that, the last piece that I would like to say in terms of the importance of financial services is such that all industries are going to be going through the transition. We had the industrialization era, now we have the transition era. Every single industry is going to be impacted by this. And if it's going to be impacted, then it means we need newer technologies to ensure that we're able to achieve that level of efficiency. And for that, we need funding. We need capital going towards those technologies. And of course, that capital needs to be going towards those industries. So this is where, again, fintech is going to play a role in moving the needle.
Thank you. So, Shadab, Singapore as a nation was also among the first to embrace sustainability and ESG in a really comprehensive and committed way. Your Monetary Authority of Singapore also issued the Green Finance Action Plan. So can you please introduce this to us in a more detail and elaborate how this encompasses the whole ecosystem?
First of all, thank you, Aniko, for having me here. And it's a pleasure to be in Budapest for the first time. I can see that there are smiles on a lot of people's faces just because we are not so used to such a good weather. I am one of them. You can walk around and you don't feel sweaty, so which is a major boon for people coming in from tropical climates. So pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I think one of the things that before I go and answer your question specifically, one of the things that we all need to understand, and this is what I really want to share here very clearly, is the private and the public sector, to a certain extent, it's of paramount importance for them to come together if you're looking at solving some of these big challenges. And this is a fact that Singapore has understood right from the beginning, which is where you can see a private sector person sitting here and talking about MAS's Green Finance Action Plan. The reality is that in Singapore, we work very closely. The private sector works very closely with our collaborative regulator, our policy makers, in terms of shaping up the policies. We are there right from the inception. We work with them, we provide them with the right feedback, and they also engage with us at different stages, not just at the inception of the policy and the announcement, but also during the implementation, the monitoring, and also reporting it back and making changes when it's needed. So think of us as, and we pride ourselves in calling ourselves the FinTech nation, because we are also learning quickly from our failures, and we pivot very quickly. So green and sustainable finance is an area where MAS has been really focused on, but MAS has been focused on because there are quite a few fintechs that are originating out of Singapore who are building up on those products and solutions and offering services and solutions for green finance to be more easily available, for it to have the right level of data, which is measured, which is also trusted and efficient to so-called feed into the green financing solutions that the financial institutions are planning. Now, specifically on that, MAS set up the Green Finance Industrial Task Force back in 2019, whose sole purpose was to evaluate how, or to work on how Singapore becomes the green and sustainable finance hub of Asia. Of course, our ambitions have evolved beyond that, and that's why I'm here as well. But the focus remains on helping Singapore achieve its net emission, zero emission goals by 2050, and all the efforts related to that, and also supporting our financial institutions in sort of using the right amount of data and collaboration across the demand and the supply side of things. So basically involving the MNCs, the corporates, the MSMEs also, to be able to provide the data which gets disclosed in a more efficient manner, and it gets conveyed across. Now, specifically on the Green Finance Action Plan, in addition to supporting the financial institutions to have more tools at their disposal, there is a grant that element to it as well. Some of you who are here from Singapore, we know the importance of grants that is there. And this is where central bank also plays a key role by enabling certain fintech sectors specifically. And for us, green and sustainable fintechs have been a primary beneficiary of the action plan because of the $50 million grant that was created. MAS also helped the financial institutions by, sort of not help, but I would say supported or encouraged by providing a $2 billion mandate to some of the asset managers, specifically targeting climate solutions. So these are some of the initiatives that are part of the Green Finance Action Plan, which has actually spurred. And there is a fintech innovation challenge that was put forward as part of this as well, through which some of the fintechs have already evolved and they have been awarded, which supports the overall ecosystem development in Singapore.
Thank you. So Namir, your own fintech has been recently launched amid exceptional international coverage. So could you please introduce us what FIRS is doing and how payments-oriented fintech can actually facilitate sustainable-oriented goals? Thanks.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for the kind words. And in terms of the growth of the fintech, which is FIRS, my own fintech, I would say it has a lot to do with the environment that we operate in. The national agenda that we have in UAE, of course, in order to become net zero by 2050, is an aggressive agenda that we have in taking all the right steps for this, and all the right regulatory environment has been created. What we do is that we first wanted to understand that, as I mentioned to you, payments is a very critical aspect of this. So what we did is that we built an infrastructure that enables businesses of all sizes to actually embed sustainable and climate action into their business model and customer journeys. Starting from the banks and financial services who work with us. We work with some of the largest banks already. They take our infrastructure, and based on that, they're able to launch issuance-based products as well, which basically is going to be, let's say, you can have your impact cards, etc., and then you also have net zero banking, sustainable banking embedded into your new product portfolios, and you also have on the acquiring side where different businesses they want to be and they want to become sustainable, right? Like your acquiring clients would want to become sustainable, right? Or they want to take some steps because that is, calculating your very essential Scope 3 emissions. And payments is, again, a critical part to that. So being able to help the banks, help their customers, which is the merchants, on the acquiring side, also be able to calculate the carbon emissions as well, or the emissions in general. Then after that, once we do the demand aggregation, we then also connect. So one side of the demand business, where we help businesses understand the environmental and social impact for every single transaction that has been done. We aggregate the demand, and on the other side, we have the supply side of the business, where we basically then work with credible carbon credit providers from all over the world, right? You work with them in order to ensure that we have the right marketplace populated with the right carbon credit providers, and then the businesses who are looking to offset based on the emissions that they have created can then emit seamlessly and very easily. Against that, we issue certificates as well that basically are validated. And all of this that we have done is built on a blockchain, in order to ensure that every single transaction that is happening, it basically eliminates double counting for carbon credits as well. So in order to solve that problem, we went on a blockchain. That kind of helps in that sense. Then this is the way we're currently doing it right now. And on top of that, the reason why we're able to trust a lot on the carbon credit piece is the slide that ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Markets, is one of the only regulators globally to have the first regulated carbon exchange called ACX. So that basically ensures that the carbon credits that we are also sourcing are credible carbon credits as well. So this is what we're doing currently right now. And the way we have designed this is in such a manner. One is banking and financial services. That's one use case. The second use case is on hospitality. We work with some of the leading hotel chains. We have the largest F&B businesses that are working with us as well. But in order to work with those F&B clients, it is important that you are able to enable them with the infrastructure, right? So if I'm going to a large retailer, the retailer cannot enable me because the payment company that they're using is not able to support them. So that's why we work with some of the best, I would say, infrastructure players. We have around 65 to 70% of the market in the Middle East today. That basically helps us, enable those solutions for not just the retailers, not just the businesses, but of course help banks make money as well in terms of not just basically providing a new product to make this green transition possible, but also at the same time have some positive books too.
Thank you. So, Shadab, you were introducing us the excellent public-private partnership going on in the ESG space. And now I would like to ask some words about what the Singapore Fintech Association itself is doing to pursue these ESG-related goals, and what are your main results up to now?
Thank you for the question. So if I look at the journey that the Singapore fintech landscape has had in the green and sustainable finance space, it's a lot tied in with the public-private sector partnership that I talked about earlier. So there's a project called Project Greenprint as part of the Green Finance Action Plan, which is a set of collaborative steps or actions that the regulator as well as the public sector took in terms of coming up with an efficient and trusted data source which can be used by financial institutions for transition finance. Now, quite a few of the fintechs have been involved in that. And just to give you a lay of the land of the landscape, we are easily about 1,500 fintech companies in Singapore. 800 plus of the members of SFA, the Singapore Fintech Association. Out of 800 of them, there are about 40 or 50 fintechs which are focused on green and sustainable fintech specifically. Out of the 10 different subcommittees we have, ranging from payments, Web3, insurtech, wealth tech, and so on. And Namir pointed out the work that his company is doing, and I could clearly see that the emerging technologies such as blockchain, AI, that is all converging together now with the green and sustainability fintechs work to provide a solution which is much more long-lasting and is able to scale. Now, an example of that is in continuation of the project Greenprint, our own regulator MAS, they have launched a platform called greenprint.ai. It's spelled as GPRNT.ai to keep it simple, but it's focused on three main aspects: disclosure, marketplace, and registry. So disclosure is where AI actually comes into play. You ask any SME person who's trying to, or let's say a CFO of a small SME or a MNC, how do you make sure that you are able to disclose properly your sustainability goals? Some of these reports are requested by investors, by regulators and all. It's very difficult for them. So if you can engage the CFOs of the future or present who can use an AI tool to be actually led into a reporting disclosure, it makes life very simple for them. Instead of going through reams of paper for creating those reports, if you can just go through a simple AI chatbot which can allow you to disclose, it gets recorded onto a registry, which can then be used by financial institutions who are making a judgment call on whether they should provide you with that loan or not. So these are some of the players. Now, if I look at the overall landscape in Singapore under SFA, the companies that are involved are in measurement. So they're using IoT devices for measurement of the sustainability goals, reporting, of course, RegTech, the regulatory aspect of it, and some of the companies have actually done work with European companies as well. And I have to highlight here, more than 40% of my fintech founders in Singapore are not born in Singapore. And I'm also happy to report that quite a few, I would say a majority of our fintech founders who are in the green and sustainable fintech space are Europeans, are of European background. In fact, our RegTech chair is also a French person. So just to highlight that there is a convergence of skills, network, capability happening between the various geographies, and we are privileged to play a pivotal role in making Singapore the global green and sustainable fintech hub. Of course, we compete constructively with UAE and other places as well.
It's amongst the best, for sure.
That debate will go on, Namir, and we can carry on. But the reality is that thankfully for us, the various parties are coming together with the right level of expertise, but more importantly, trust amongst them to build that infrastructure which can then be tapped on by global financial institutions to lead their transition finance solutions from Singapore. And that's where fintechs, which are part of my SFA ecosystem, play a very pivotal role. And I'm happy to report that we have had some good successes based on that.
Well, that's quite laudable, thank you. And now I'm turning to the MENA Fintech Association, and you and your partners launched the Sustainable Fintech Alliance last year. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the results so far are there, and also what would be your advice to a local fintech association? How can they incentivize more ESG-related actions?
Thank you very much. So Middle East, the MENA Fintech Association is spanning from, it covers 22 countries across the region. That's the first thing that we do. We have more than, I would say, 280 plus leaders within the association who are driving different agendas similar to Singapore Fintech Association, where we have different verticals. And one of them is Sustainable Fintech Alliance. In Sustainable Fintech Alliance today, we have some of the largest organizations who have pledged. What have they pledged for? The first thing that they have pledged for is to take action. Now, when we were building up the entire scenario, the first thing that we did is that, listen, everyone talks about sustainability. It's a great thing to talk about. It's a great hashtag, right? But do people really understand it? So then we basically went out and we built a curriculum in collaboration with the London Institute of Banking and Finance. A piece of it was also with the Cambridge Centre of Alternate Finance. We built a curriculum. Our curriculum was designed to basically ensure that we're able to educate the audience, the fintechs, in order to understand what really is sustainability and what actions can they take before they start taking any action. It is important for us to understand. So we then gave out scholarships worth $150,000 to 30 students, executives, primarily from different parts of the world, in order for them to basically learn about sustainability. Once that was done, the next piece that we did is that then we built a pledge with a guidebook, which will be launched in collaboration with UAE Ministry of Climate Change during the COP28, which is a guide for fintechs to basically take step-by-step action on how to implement sustainability within their business models and how to even communicate this to the audience, to their customers too. And then after that, we're bringing in reporting. Reporting is essential. How can you report? What are the tools that you need to take in order to report? What are the credibility factors that you need to assess in order to do that as well? So we have some of the largest organizations, including Meta, we have Ian, we have Visa, MasterCard. There are around like 28 large organizations who have pledged, and we have more and more fintechs coming as well. This is how the Sustainable FinTech Pledge is actually becoming more and more mature. And on top of that, with the UAE Ministry of Climate Change, we are also working on something called the National Dialogue for Climate Action. That is basically, and I would recommend all fintech bodies to do that, to work in collaboration with the local ministries, with the local bodies, in order to ensure that the sense of urgency is communicated to the fintechs in order to understand how and what role can they play. So the National Dialogue for Climate Action is for fintech, and then we also enable the National Dialogue for Climate Action for food security, for a circular economy, because in order to achieve circular economy, you need fintechs again, right? So typically, this is how we have laid the foundation when it comes to MENA Fintech Association, and we are very proud of the response that we have received from I would say, the North African side of the world till, I would say, Oman. So it has been a great response altogether, and we are really, really positive that in order to achieve the net zero targets by 2050, the MENA region is going to play an extremely pivotal role. Yes, right now we're the center of the world. Everyone is talking about the Middle East and North Africa based on the opportunity we have. And that's why we call it the gold mine region, because there is growth, there is capital, there is talent. And as mentioned by Shadab, right, expats. We have, in just UAE, we are like, I would say 90% are expats, right? So that tells you that welcoming global talent is something that is a part of our agenda. Number two, having global hubs. Number three, promoting innovation. Number four, talent being encouraged in order to come and build. So for the sustainability and the net zero targets to be achieved, we need newer talent. We need more people with more passion to come out and build something. And they need an environment. When I went to UAE for the first time 6 years ago, I had zero connections. I knew no one. But it is the environment that we create for entrepreneurs in order to go out and build is what we need to also focus on, because this is the transition era. We need new people, new talent, and we need intention to action.
Thank you. So it's quite inspiring that how many ideas, initiatives you and your partners do have. And actually what we need is more ambition and more prompt actions. So I do hope that our fintechs can learn from you, from all these exercises. And with this, I would like to thank you for your coming. And I do hope that we will be in contact for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sombati, for leading this inspiring dialogue, which also set a great tone for the entire panel. And now we are about to move on to the panel discussion today. Therefore, please let me invite Mr. Daniel Palotai, Executive Director at International Monetary Fund, because he's going to moderate this session dedicated to finance. Mr. Palotai, the stage is all yours, and I cannot wait to listen to your interesting discussion.
Kamran Khan, who is Deutsche Bank's group level head of ESG in Asia Pacific. He's established and he is also heading the Deutsche Bank's ESG Center of Excellence in Singapore. And he's also a member of the Deutsche Bank Group's Global Sustainability Steering Committee. Prior to joining Deutsche, Mr. Khan established Infratech Capital, an impact fund which invests in companies utilizing technology to provide infrastructure services and to contribute to the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Khan previously held senior executive roles at the World Bank and helped establish the World Bank Group's regional hub in Singapore. He served as an advisor on infrastructure finance to APEC, ASEAN, and the G20. He has also served on the board of advisors at a variety of market-leading companies using technology to achieve ESG goals. Please welcome to the floor. Our next speaker is Mr. Xin Wang, who is Director General of the Research Bureau of the People's Bank of China, as well as the co-chair of the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group. Previously, he served as Director of Policy Research at the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, then as Deputy Director General of the Financial Research Institute of the PBC, as head of the PBC Representative Office in Frankfurt, as well as Director of the State Council's Joint Conference on Combating Currency Counterfeit, just to name a few of his responsibilities. He has published dozens of academic papers and articles in domestic and international journals. His research focuses on sustainable finance, international finance, financial system reform, fintech, and social security. Please welcome to the floor. Our third speaker is Mr. Nurkat Kushimov. He's Chief Executive Officer of the Astana Financial Services Authority, the AFSA, which is the independent regulator of the Astana International Financial Center, the AIFC. He has extensive experience in the area of financial market regulation. Prior to his appointment to CEO, Mr. Kushimov served as executive body member in charge of fintech regulation and company registration at the AFSA. He started his career at the AIFC in 2018 at the Astana International Exchange, the AIX, where he oversaw matters relating to the regulation of issuers and IPOs of Kazakhstan and international companies. Over the years, he has had various leadership positions in civil service, including Ministries of Justice and Interior. Please welcome to the floor. And our fourth speaker is Mr. Taeyong Cho, who is Director General of the Economic Research Institute at the Bank of Korea. Since beginning his career at the Bank of Korea in 1995, he has worked with several topics, such as areas of the Korean economy, international commodity markets, global economic issues, producers' prices, national account statistics, capital measurement and productivity analysis, as well as North Korean economic studies. He was a major developer of the official Korean national balance sheet between 2008 and 2017. Mr. Cho is currently working on the analysis of Korea's past and future growth to formulate key strategies to maintain its growth potential under the declining and aging population. Please welcome to the floor. Nowadays, we are facing, as we have seen in the keynote speeches, very serious and strong geoeconomic fragmentation. And any event like this, which promotes dialogue, carries very much weight and much more than even before. Even where I come from, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in our publications, like the recent World Economic Outlook, the WEO, we confirm that the prevailing tensions worldwide risk fragmenting the global economy into rival blocks, and this generates losses for everyone. we could all sense how fragmentation affects everyday life through various channels. And let me just highlight a few of these developments. One is the new trade barriers. If we calculate or just count how many new trade barriers are set up every year since 2019, they have tripled. And some key trade relations seem to have been really rerouted, if I may put so. The other pattern to highlight is that investment and financial flows are increasingly driven by geopolitical alignments instead of economic rationale. Again, that's a loss to global welfare. And finally, the increased uncertainty which still weighs on the outlook. Smaller economies are even more exposed to that and need to develop strong strategies to address these challenges. Having said that, we are not necessarily bound to this route, and we can do better. Along this, not only losses can be avoided, but we should focus on how we can maximize the gains together. To capitalize on these opportunities, we have to take sustainability considerations into account, into policymaking and everyday actions. Hungary, throughout its history, has been a meeting place for people and ideas like this forum here today between the East and West. So I encourage everyone to use this opportunity provided by the Eurasia Forum to promote, broaden, and deepen the mutually beneficial partnership across the regions. And ultimately, this is what can support the goals of peace and prosperity, as Mr. Wu said it in his keynote speech. In this first panel discussion, we will try to have a closer look at how sustainability consideration influence finances and vice versa, and also attempt to identify best practices, and maybe you can mention a few specific examples. Sustainability considerations and digitalization, the green and the digital transition have become key drivers in developments of finance. And I can also tell from experience that these considerations have actively formed the activities and views of the IMF recently and in the past years. Just to mention a few examples here, now at the fund, macro-financial sustainability is addressed at a wider base and taking into account country-specific patterns. It was emphasized by Governor Matolci and Minister Varga how that sustainability is important. The other pattern and important aim of the IMF is a standalone climate strategy, which we have recently set up, and which also includes the introduction of new financing facility aiming at helping the countries to help their long-term resilience. And finally, the fund is also supporting members in the introduction and dealing with challenges related to digital money, and hope to benefit from technologies and fend off the risk, as also Mr. Governor said in his speech. So without further ado, let's start our discussion. Maybe I would first turn to Kamran and ask whether financial institutions, what is your view on financial institutions regarding climate change? You are head of Deutsche Bank's ESG Center of Excellence, and I'm wondering, how do you see the financial providers' role in reaching the global sustainability goals? What can you contribute to that as from the private sector?
Great. First of all, thank you very much to MNB for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Look, we from the very start, need to be aware that banks are just a reflection of the economy. So banks are not the change agents. They are the ones who allow change to happen. We have a global problem, regardless of which industry you come from, as individuals, as countries, as corporates, that needs to be addressed. So a financial institution has no choice but to participate in where the global trends are. So as a bank, about 3.5 years ago, we set up our own ESG taxonomy, which is very closely tied to the EU ESG taxonomy. And the Center of Excellence that you refer to that we set up in Singapore is very unique. We don't have a similar structure in London or New York or even Frankfurt. We set it up in Singapore because we know that our clients need very customized advice and solutions for how to do business in Asia and how to do business outbound from Asia into other markets. And so in order for us to do that, if we're going to advise our clients, we need to first set our own house in order. So we set up this taxonomy, we set up a very, very strong control system and incentive system within the organization. We have a goal set to do, roughly $100 billion euros of ESG or sustainable finance business every year till 2025. We're well on track of that. Started from 2020 and it's been going well. We have our own net zero targets. We've been, net zero in our own operations for more than 10 years now. But now we have set the targets for even scope 3, which is basically our scope 3 emissions associated with our portfolio. And we've already laid out the glide path, like how we will get there from where we are today. And lastly, from a bank's perspective, I want to just highlight, we do this not just because it's the right thing to do, it's the responsible thing to do, but we also do this because we recognize that it is imperative from a commercial perspective. If we are not a premier ESG bank in years to come, it'll become very difficult for any bank to be premier anything bank, because this thing is permeating all aspects of financial services industry. So if you're going to advise a client, and you can do mergers and acquisitions very well, you can do bond financing, but you don't know ESG, you don't have a very good reputation on ESG, you're going to struggle. And I think some of the European banks are kind of ahead of this curve, but everybody's catching up, including, we had the panel earlier in Singapore. I mean, there's a lot of the local banks, regional banks are all catching on, sometimes driven by regulators who say, we now expect banks to do X, Y, Z, sometimes driven by their clients, sometimes driven by their own staff who want to all belong to an organization that's responsible and is leading in the key challenge of the world. And then last but not least, people like us, all of us individuals, as consumers, we have a huge role to play. If I said, I'm not going to drink water from this brand because it has doesn't have a very good ESG reputation, I can assure you within seconds, it will have an impact. If millions or big proportion of the customers started doing that. And we're seeing that from industry after industry and country after country. It's not moving as fast as we would all like for it to move, but the trend is absolutely there.
Thank you very much. I found it very interesting when you said that having an ESG profile is a must-have nowadays if you want to serve your clients and give them a full service globally. Let's come back to this point maybe later in the discussion, but let me now turn to Xin. And we all know that China is a pioneer in financial technology, and majority of the Chinese population uses some kind of financial technology application. Cash transfer are dramatically decreasing in China, and the CBDC is perhaps the most advanced in China. At the same time, also the Chinese government, as we have heard in the speech by Mr. Wu, said that they're very ambitious sustainability goals, but these are very difficult to achieve, in particular if you look at the 2030 SDG goals. So what is, in your opinion, how can China progress financial technology and support to reaching the government's SDG targets at the same time? And maybe you could combine it with giving us a hint on how digitalization can support these goals.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to participate in this forum. Actually, last year I also participated in the forum, and it's so nice to meet all of you in person. And first, I would like to say that you mentioned the fragmentation and uncertainties in the world and so on. And I'm happy to say in the sphere of sustainable finance, actually, we have witnessed a relatively strong cooperation spirit among countries. jurisdictions and partners and so on. Personally, I'm very much involved in the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group. And I and my co-chair, U.S. Treasury co-chair, work closely together. And during the process of sustainable finance development in China, we partnered with many countries, including UK, Hungary, and other countries, and other international organizations, and so on. So we learn from each other and benefit from each other. So I think it's very encouraging. So I would like to emphasize this before answering your questions. In terms of the role of fintech in China's sustainable finance development, actually is more and more widely used in China, and especially so in the so-called green finance pilot zones. And actually, lots of financial institutions and companies are using fintech, including mainly big data, cloud computing, and AI, and also including generative AI in a lot of businesses, including, for example, data correction, which is the most the basic area. And also, financial institutions are using fintechs to develop financial products and so on. For example, the banks are widely use fintechs to extend loans, to issue bonds, and so on. And financial institutions also use fintechs to do the climate and nature-related financial risk assessment and evaluation, and so on. And even for the central bank and financial regulators, they use the fintechs to use the data and information disclosure by companies and financial institutions to do the assessments of financial institutions' green finance performance to provide more incentive and constraint to them. So I think now more and more market entities and even regulators are using fintechs. Of course, we're now facing some challenges, including the quality of data and to some extent lack of coordination among the different entities in the collecting data and so on. And actually, we need to do more in terms of financial regulators and central banks to integrating more the fintech principles in the sustainable finance developments. So going forward, we need to do more. We still have a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That commercial banks and even regulators are using fintech. I think this is an area where China is very well ahead, and we should really learn from your example. Now that we have touched upon fintechs, let me ask Nurkat a question about the fintech companies, which are obviously also raising and increasing in numbers across the globe. And from a regulator's perspective, I'm wondering, what is your strategy? How can you ensure that they contribute to also to social wealth and the wealth of the citizens, and not just cause a disturbance? And what is your overall strategy and approach to these challenges?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to that conference. I would like to thank Central Bank of Hungary for organizing this important event on a very consistent way. And I am with my colleague here not the first time, and I'm very thankful, and it's very enlightening speeches and discussion all the time. Back to the conversation and the question. When I saw the kind of the agenda, the questions, and the way we kind of the points we want to achieve, and we saw this two mega trends that kind of all the previous speeches were kind of focused on. One is the ESG and sustainable finance, and another huge digitalization which is going on in the industry and how that impacts finance. For us, for some time, there was quite a separate trend. So we had a huge ESG regulatory agenda on its own. Kazakhstan joined, and this carbon neutrality countries that embrace the strategies to become fully carbon neutral. And therefore, we had several regulatory initiatives which basically aim at a couple of things that Mr. Han mentioned. That kind of first, it should be kind of prestigious for financial firms to have an ESG agenda, and secondly, the deployment of capital. We should enable the deployment of capital, so the cost of capital should incentivize the companies to embrace the ESG sustainable finance instruments. Otherwise, first, kind of, it's not viable, commercially viable, so people need to make money as well. And the second big trend in Kazakhstan always was digitalization. We are in the top countries in the world in terms of digitalization. All the e-government services are provided digitally. The internet penetration is high. And we embraced all these new technologies, so kind of we do provide regulation for crypto exchanges and crypto providers. The fintech is on the rise. Most of the banks are fully digital. Most of the financial services are fully digital. I don't remember myself having a cash in my pocket. And we already kind of had a first transaction on CDBC going on, so we already completed our pilot project on that. So that's two mega trends are very present in our country. But I was thinking kind of where they merged together. And it was not very obvious from the first glance, but if you think about and keep thinking about that, then there are so many interplays between two mega trends. And from just few examples, and they all were already mentioned here, from using AI for reporting, for using blockchain and smart contracts when you deploy. For example, you issue bonds, you tokenize the bonds, you inbuild smart contracts in that, and you can trace how the proceeds of the bonds are used across the full chain, and you kind of fight or eliminate the issue of greenwashing to kind of a certain extent. So I think the way the two trends are kind of crossing each other are enormous. There are so many examples. When I started to think where we had that, for example, we had a huge mining industry in Kazakhstan, and we enabled crypto exchanges to operate. But then there were some concerns that the consumption of the energy is high, and they are not very green, and therefore, when we started to speak with these people, they were very ready to embrace the ESG agenda. So if you enable them to deploy their capital to like wind farms or solar panels to produce the energy they need to provide further financial products, these people are very keen to do that, and this is a policy decisions that they kind of seek from the regulator to do that. So I think, kind of as a regulator, we are quite keen to learn all these business models, of course, to assess the risk and to see where there are these interplays between different traditional finance, sustainable finance, and digitalization, and to enable them through our regulatory decisions to foster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I found it really striking that Kazakhstan pioneered making the citizens all services available in digital form. This is an area where also the Hungarian government has strong ambitions, and we are very keenly looking at what you have done right and what are the good examples to learn from. Let me now turn to Taeyong and just introduce my question by referring to the many challenges, global challenges, which hamper global growth and development. We could think about the pandemic, global conflicts, demographic challenges, and of course changes, and of course the climate change. And at first sight, one would think that these are not related to finance, but in the end, we see very strong interlinkages. So I'm wondering if you could tell us your views about how the financial sector can support the achievement of SDGs. And maybe if you want to focus a bit on central banks' role, what do you think are the central banks' new roles among these challenges?
First of all, I would express my deep gratitude to Governor Matorci for his inviting me to this forum. And also, it is my great pleasure to meet my Nemzeti Bank colleagues here today, with whom I had a research workshop in September, Seoul, Korea. And maybe in addition, I'm joyful to hear that, to see that the relationship between Bank of Korea and my other Nemzeti banks is evolving in a new and fruitful way. Basically, when you talk about the central bank's role, I remind it's a good case. We have already a good case in my other Nemzeti Bank, because you are the first EU central banks who inserted in your law the sustainability clause. I think that's a very wonderful maybe movement. I mean that for Bank of Korea, we have in our law, we have two basic missions: the price stability and financial stability also. If that word is included in our law, it is our mission. It is our tasks. Anyway, we have to do something to attain the goal. So in that sense, the word, even that is just a word, is included in the law, but it is maybe some starting point for the central bank work in that direction. Maybe in order to implement the mission, maybe central bank should assess the current situation of sustainability of the country. And then maybe if the situation is not so good, in that case, it has to maybe produce some kind of measures, or it has to give some suggestion to government to do some kind of actions. In that sense, I envy your maybe law. You already have the sustainability, the clause. And then if I come back to Korea, I hope that our next revision of Bank of Korea law, we will try to insert that word together. And then from that start point, the central bank will be more involved in the sustainability issues. And then actually it will guide the central bank to do an active role in that sense. So maybe we will later discuss about that aspect, and then we will work together. Central bankers work together to get the world go toward to a sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you for recognizing the Central Bank of Hungary's achievements in in green finance. We have a multi-pillar green strategy, and it's good to see that this is recognized, and maybe some good examples can also help others to adopt such strategies. And of course, I can speak on behalf of my colleagues that it's more than welcome to engage and continue this dialogue between central banks. Of course, that applies to everyone. Of course, even the private sector. Let me now turn a little bit to the green finance and ask you, any of you, or all of you, what do you think are the key challenges now for green finance, and what digital solutions, digitalization can help addressing these? You can, of course, answer these questions from a regulator's point of view, or give some private sector examples. I'm wondering who wants to start. Yes, please. Nurkat, please.
Yeah, I think kind of again, while I was thinking about to these trends, I thought that kind of they are very complementary to each other. On the one hand, sustainability and kind of the carbon emission, kind of climate change is a global problem. It's a global issue, and no country could resolve it on its own. Whatever we do as a regulator, as a nation, as the government, it only kind of have a limited impact on our territory. But we are dependent on each other. So if other countries don't do well and don't kind of embrace that agenda, that impact everyone, because the air is everyone's, the ocean is everyone's, and kind of the climate is everyone's. But kind of years ago, we didn't have tools to have a dialogue, to have kind of solutions that would be global. And I think the digitalization and this trend, and which we see in finance, which is very obvious in finance, I think provides us a unique tool to make the solution global as well. So what I mean that kind of we have fragmentation now, kind of regionalization of the agenda. EU is pioneering. There is a quite robust taxonomy. There are this number of instruments like cross-border adjustment mechanism, etc., which has impact on everyone else. And we, on other hands, have BRI initiatives. We have a Turek state initiatives, also quite big on the sustainability agenda, but that also have impact on everyone else. So I think what we need to think, and I think this is a very good platform for the dialogue, that we need to think how these two trends could join together and create a global solution for a global issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also for highlighting these trends. I'm wondering who wants to come in next to this. Yes, please.
So, look, green finance is in certain sectors already very much in place. We as a global civilization need it to be accelerated far faster and in higher magnitude, right? But it's not universally true for all industries. So let me give an example. If you deal with real estate, if you're a real estate developer, when you have built a building, who do you want? Do you want the tenants like the multinational corporations? You want the choice tenants. That's who you want. When you look at those tenants, they all have a commitment to sustainability now. So for example, a bank like us, if we wanted to find new office space in Budapest, I can 100% guarantee you that there would be two questions asked. What's the price, and is the green certification in place? There's no way we would move into an office space, new office space now, that is not certified green. That is true across the MNC world. So if you are a real estate developer, your equation is quite clear. I need to do this for my commercial well-being as a company. It's not a nice to have. It's not a public relations thing. It's not a branding thing. It's very real to your business, right? And I would submit it's equally real to our business as a bank. But then you look at some other sectors where that equation is still not set up. So as was mentioned earlier, people are being asked to do sustainable finance at a cost to them. And that story cannot last. It's not sustainable. No pun intended here, right? You have to have economic drivers for that. And there, I would say that governments actually do have a huge role to play. Because if you started changing policy, you will create the incentives for the sustainable options to come out from under the non-sustainable options and become cost-effective and economically viable. That has happened now already in renewable energy, for example. You go to India, you will see that renewable energy is already cheaper than fossil fuel because the incentives were created. So there's a significant role to be played. Trade, very good example. You mentioned earlier about trade barriers and so on. Let me tell you, ESG standards are going to become a trade constraint. If you want to sell into EU, for example, you better have certification for your products which meet the EU requirements, or A, you will pay a tax at the border, and even before that, your buyers are not going to buy from you if you cannot show that your product is sustainability designed and produced.
Let me be provocative. Does that not lead into greenwashing when the regulator and governments are pushing private sector companies into having this certification and to label everything as green, from bonds to real estate? I see it, some of you want to react, but maybe I give you back the floor because I interrupted you.
Look, greenwashing is a byproduct of, I would say, shoddy advice and shoddy execution. So is there fraud in trade now? Yes, there's often fraud. People say, I will ship you 20 cartons of something and they ship only 15, right? That is greenwashing equivalent. So there's no reason to not set policy right because you think, oh, well, I set the policy, people won't be able to meet the policy and they'll cheat. But, you know, and the advisors and the entire chain has a role to play. So if I'm advising or providing financing for a company to sell something from China into Europe, and I'm certifying that their entire supply chain is sustainable, they have the certifications and so on and so forth, and that loan I made available to them is stamped by my bank as sustainable finance, then it is my responsibility to make sure that that is actually done. And then it is the responsibility of the buyer to make sure that what they have bought is indeed sustainable and not, you know, shut their eyes to something that's very blatantly not in place. So I think this greenwashing is a real issue. People raise it, but I don't see it as the constraint for the growth of this market.
Thank you for the insight. Before we move on, does anyone want to react on greenwashing? I see both. I saw first Nurkat and maybe then Xin on this. And of course, if you want to react, then
I just wanted to kind of strengthen and kind of develop this point Mr. Hunt just made, that kind of because we have this cost issue that increasing when you require entrepreneurs to become or shift to sustainability and kind of as a construction example, you need also to think of the other leg of the issue. And that's what I mentioned, that for us it's important that deployment of capital is also available. And that and this is issue on several levels. And for example, it's a global issue, first of all. And developing countries are less privileged, I would say, to the deployment of capital in that area, and that issue also needs to be addressed. But also kind of on a level of the particular jurisdiction, we are the regulator and the government, we try to solve this issue that the cost of capital and the deployment of capital is affordable. So that the entrepreneurs, when they increase the cost because they want to switch to sustainable production, they have an opportunity to attract the investment which will offset this cost of sustainable development. So either through kind of additional margin or through subsidized cost of capital.
Thank you very much. Sin, you wanted to also add to this question?
Yes, I would like to emphasize the importance of capacity building to meet the challenges of sustainable finance development. Yes, now more and more jurisdictions and institutions are attaching great importance to sustainable development. But some of them simply lack the capacity needed, especially so in developing countries, emerging economies, and especially so for SMEs. I mentioned earlier the green finance pilot zones, and I think one of the advantages of the pilot zone is that they can build their capacities through learning by doing. And now the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group now is working on already achieve a technical assistance action plan. And going forward, the G20 as a WG will play a more important role in coordinating the international efforts in improving, developing capacities for sustainable finance development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in capacity development. And I should also use this opportunity to say that the IMF's maybe one of the key pillars of our activity beyond surveillance and lending is CD, capacity development, to help the membership. Thank you for bringing it in. And Tang Yong, you also wanted to add to this point.
Yeah, it's a quite important question. And then for me, I try to stress the importance of information disclosure. It can reduce maybe greenwashing. Also, it will make people recognize the real threat. So in Korea, you know that during the COVID-19 period in Korea, we identified where is the virus coming out, and then how it is spread across the region, and then where is the mask sold, and where is the hospitals who has vaccines kind of information. So in this sustainability issues, we need that kinds of information, maybe platform in the internet, or maybe it could be national one, or it could be regional one, or it could be global one. And globally, the national situation will show, and then nationally, regional, the position will be shown, and then regional, but very specific, maybe spots situation will be shown. In that information, people will aware of the where is the source of the maybe the greenhouse gas emission kind of things, and also in order to maybe stop greenwashing, we need to maybe very specific information for a project. I mean that for this project, how large greenhouse gases are produced, from what sources, from what networks, kind of information should be included in that information platforms. By making that kinds of platforms, people will maybe will be more accurate knowledge of the project, and then they will support the project, and then also they will argue against some sources of the greenhouse gas emissions, and then they will people will maybe behave against that kind of action. So I try to give you some example of the importance of information platform. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. I think that was an excellent point when you said that you need to make people aware and understand. And actually that leads to my next question to the whole panel about educating the public, educating customers. Is it something that from a private company point of view comes as self-explanatory, or something you are thinking about, or is it purely marketing and then the customers will figure out their ways? But I could also address the question to the regulator side and ask you whether regulators see that they should play a role in educating customers in these areas. And of course, that all relates to capacity development. Who wants to come in first? Nurkat? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a very important question. And yeah, I think from our side and from our experience, we do see that it is a very important role of the government as a whole and as a regulator. We did establish Astana International Financial Green Finance Center, which provide training across the population, especially for small and medium enterprises. But also what we do, because we found that gap in the knowledge and the expertise on our market, that kind of when the entrepreneur or the company want to issue, for example, a green bond, there was no, like 3 years ago, there was a gap that there was no company which will easily certify that and then kind of provide the full services. Like a colleague from Deutsche Bank mentioned that they will do its full circle services around that. So we created this financial green finance center in Kazakhstan, and it was a huge success. So 70% of all the bonds issued are certified by this center. And on the proceeds they receive, they provide kind of a lot of training. So it's a non-profit for us, but the impact is huge. And I think we should continue with that. I think this is a very important part of kind of promoting and fostering this sustainable finance agenda.
Thank you for commitment on this. Kamran, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I want to just quickly add that, first of all, we need to be, at least in the private sector, we have to be a bit more modest. So educating a client is really not the right way to enter any conversation. The way to think about it is, if you look at corporations across the world, at the MNC, the higher, the bigger companies, they all are very aware that they need to do something about it, either to manage the cost of capital from going up or losing the commercial attractiveness of their value proposition to end consumers. So they are all aware, and it is coming to all parts of the world slowly. Eventually, even here, everywhere, even the small micro enterprises will have to deal with this. How do I make that part of my commercial strategy, the sustainability thing? So then the question becomes, if they are all aware what's happening, they all know they need to do something. I'm talking now about the big companies, the MNCs. They know they need to do something, but it's not always clear what they should do and how. Because the last thing you want as a C-suite staff is to put together a whole lot of effort, resources, and at the end of that, you're expecting some love letters to come your way, and you're getting a lot of negative comments. Oh, you did this, you disseminated this information, but you forgot that. Or this is not as good as it should have been. So advisors, quality matters. We mentioned earlier quite a bit about greenwashing. There are three types of greenwashing. One is blatant fraud. I'm doing something that is not what I'm saying I'm doing, right? And I know that. Second is, I want to do something. I got some advisors. They gave me bad advice. I went forward and did it. And now I'm having to answer why I did it the wrong way. Third is, I'm doing something, I'm not aware of the impact until somebody comes and says, you know, this operation you have in country X, this is causing this damage. And now I have to scramble to figure out how to do this. So advisory is how I would look at this question rather than education or lecturing people or telling them this is morally right and this is bad. I mean, it has to make economic sense for the change to be truly sustainable.
Thank you very much for providing both regulators and the private sector perspective. I can see that our time is up. If you wanted to add something, I won't stop you. Otherwise, I want to thank you very much for contributing to this, I think, very, very interesting discussion. And if you allow, I can offer to the audience that we stay around in the coffee break, and the audience can approach you with further questions. And please continue also in the social program with this very interesting topic. Thank you very much for this very interesting insight from you. Thank you.